All right, listeners, ready to dive into some of the juiciest stuff out there? We're talking love, the language of love, specifically dating in English.
Ooh, I love it. I'm so ready.
Yeah, and luckily one of you shared a source that's basically like a cheat sheet for dating conversations.
Nice.
Right? And it's got everything from like how to make a killer first impression to, expressing your feelings, even navigating this tricky breakup.
All the good stuff, all the messy stuff.
It's all in there. And I gotta say, I consider myself pretty fluent in the language of love.
Right.
But even I'm excited to pick up some new moves, some extra smooth phrases, and just get those cultural insights to help all of us become, dating pros in English.
Absolutely. And I think what's so cool about this source is it's not just about memorizing, cheesy pickup lines or anything.
Right.
It's about really understanding the nuances of communication in a romantic context. And that can be so powerful, whether you're looking for love or trying to deepen a connection you already have.
Yeah. And I'm really curious to hear about those cultural differences because I know dating can be so different around the world.
Absolutely. We'll definitely touch on that.
All right. So let's jump right in. Where do we begin this journey of linguistic love?
Well, it all starts with first impressions.
Okay.
And, one thing that stood out to me in the source was how much emphasis they put on just being present and attentive. And it might sound basic, right?
Yeah.
But think about it. How often are we truly focused on the person in front of us? Especially like on a date when, nerves are running high.
Oh, that is so true. I've definitely been guilty of like mentally rehearsing what I'm going to say next instead of actually listening.
Totally.
So how do we actually become more present in those moments?
Well, the source actually gives a really practical tip. It says, focus on nonverbal cues.
Okay.
Things like a genuine smile, maintaining eye contact. These little things can actually speak volumes.
Wow, more than words even.
Often more than words. And for our listener who's navigating the dating world in English, those nonverbal cues are universal.
That's such a good point because a smile is a smile no matter where you are in the world.
Exactly.
So we've nailed the first impression with our genuine smile. We're making eye contact.
You got it.
What's next? How do we keep that conversation flowing?
Okay, so this is where those open-ended questions come in.
Oh, yeah, the source talks about that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So instead of saying, like, do you like movies? Try, what kind of movies really draw you in?
Ooh, I see the difference.
Right. You're inviting them to share more about themselves, and it just leads to a much more, interesting conversation.
It's like opening a door instead of just peeking through a tiny window.
I love that analogy.
And the source also talks about sharing passions and hobbies. Why is that so important early on?
Well, sharing passions is a huge way to build rapport. When you find out you have something in common, it just makes the conversation flow so much easier.
Yeah, but there's a trap there, right?
Yes, there is.
Because it's easy to fall into that me trap. Where you get so excited about something you love and you just end up dominating the conversation.
We've all been there.
Yeah. Not exactly a recipe for a second date.
Not the best strategy, no.
So how do we find that balance between sharing our passions and actually showing genuine interest in theirs?
Active listening, my friend. That's the key.
Okay.
And I don't just mean nodding along and saying,
Right.
I mean really engaging with what they're saying, asking follow-up questions, responding thoughtfully. It shows you're not just waiting for your turn to talk, you're actually curious about their world.
Right. It shows you value their perspective and their experiences.
Exactly.
Which is, such a crucial element of building any kind of meaningful connection, whether it's romantic or not.
Absolutely.
So speaking of taking things to the next level, any tips on actually asking someone out in English?
Ooh, good question.
Especially if you're feeling nervous,
Yeah, that can be the hardest part. Well, the source actually has some good advice on this.
Okay, lay it on me.
So the key is to keep it casual, low pressure.
Okay.
So instead of some big romantic gesture,
Right.
just suggest a specific activity. Like, hey, I heard there's a cool new exhibit at the art museum. You want to check it out sometime?
Oh, I like that it's specific. It's not too intense.
Exactly.
Especially when you're still in those early stages.
Right. And the source also mentions confidence is super attractive.
Oh, yeah, that's so true.
So even if you're nervous, try to project, a sense of ease, like you're comfortable with yourself.
So it's not about being some kind of smooth talker.
No, not at all.
It's more about just being authentic.
Exactly. And when you're confident, you just radiate this sense of authenticity.
Right.
Which makes you more approachable.
Yeah.
More magnetic.
But sometimes confidence is hard to come by.
Oh, tell me about it.
It's like my inner critic is louder than a stadium full of screaming fans.
Yeah, that inner critic can be tough.
Any tips on how to silence that negative self-talk?
Well, the source doesn't really get into that specifically.
Oh, okay.
But one thing that helps me is to kind of reframe those negative thoughts. So instead of focusing on what could go wrong,
Right.
I try to visualize a positive outcome.
Oh, I like that.
And sometimes it's just about taking a deep breath and reminding myself, hey, it's okay to be nervous. It means I care.
It means you're human.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's say we aced that first date. We're both feeling the spark.
Okay. I like where this is going.
The source talks about describing your ideal partner. Why is that so important?
This is where things get interesting
Okay.
because it's not about having this rigid checklist
Right.
of qualities. It's more about getting clear on your values, what truly matters to you in a relationship.
And especially when you're dating in a new language and culture.
Oh, absolutely, because societal expectations, those relationship norms can be so different.
Yeah, you need that compass
Exactly.
to guide you through this sometimes choppy waters of dating.
Love that analogy.
So how do you actually describe those deeper values and qualities without sounding like you're reading from a self-help book?
Right. Well, the source says be genuine and specific.
Okay.
So instead of saying, I want someone who's kind,
Right.
you could say, I'm drawn to people who have a passion for helping others.
Oh, that's so much better.
Right. It paints a picture
Yes.
of the kind of energy you want in your life.
And it's not just about what you're looking for in a partner.
Right.
It's about sharing your own values, too.
Exactly. Letting them see the real you.
Okay, so we've nailed the first impression. We asked them out with confidence. We've shared our passions.
Yeah.
We've even described our ideal partner.
We're on a roll.
I know, right now it's time to inject a little romance.
Definitely.
The source has a whole section on compliments, but it cautions against generic flattery.
Oh, yeah. Why is that?
Yeah, why is that?
Because a well-placed compliment can make someone feel so seen, so appreciated.
Right.
But a generic compliment like, you're pretty, it just falls flat.
Ouch.
It's like saying, I noticed you exist.
Okay, yeah, not exactly swoon-worthy.
Not really, no.
So how do we step up our compliment game?
Be specific. Make it personal.
Okay.
So instead of saying, you have a nice smile, try, your smile lights up the room.
Ooh, I feel the difference already.
Right.
You're not just complimenting a physical attribute.
Exactly.
You're acknowledging the impact they have on you and the people around them.
It's about recognizing their energy.
And think about it from a psychological perspective.
Yes.
When someone gives us a specific compliment, it tells us they're paying attention. They see us as individuals.
Absolutely.
And they value something unique about us.
And that's the foundation of attraction.
I am officially inspired to up my compliment game.
I love it.
But before we go too far down the road of romance, let's talk about something that can be a little awkward, especially early on.
Okay, what's that?
Relationship status.
Ah, yes. The dreaded relationship status talk.
The source emphasizes being upfront and honest about where you stand. Why is that so crucial?
Because honesty is the foundation of any healthy relationship. But it's especially important when you're dating in a new language and culture because misunderstandings can happen so easily.
Yeah, what might be considered casual in one culture
Exactly.
could be interpreted as something way more serious in another.
It's all about context.
So how do we navigate those potential cultural differences and make sure everyone's on the same page?
Clear communication is key.
Okay.
The source suggests being upfront about your relationship status early on.
Right.
Whether you're single, dating casually, looking for something serious, just put it out there.
And if you're not sure about the other person's intentions,
Ask.
ask, don't assume.
Exactly, because assuming can lead to so much drama,
Unnecessary drama.
right? It's much better to have that open, honest conversation.
Even if it feels a little awkward at first.
In the long run, it's worth it.
And speaking of navigating potentially awkward situations, the source also talks about online dating,
Oh yeah, online dating, a whole other world.
which has become such a huge part of the dating landscape these days.
It really has.
What are some of the unique challenges and opportunities that come with dating online, especially when you're doing it in English?
Well, online dating definitely has its own set of pros and cons.
Okay.
On the one hand, you can connect with people from all over the world.
Right, a whole world of potential connections.
Exactly. But it also adds another layer of complexity,
Yeah.
especially with language and cultural differences.
So you need to be extra mindful of how you communicate
Absolutely.
and the potential for misunderstandings.
Definitely. And the source really stresses being genuine and authentic
Okay.
in your profile and your interactions.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
don't try to be someone you're not.
Because ultimately, that just leads to disappointment.
For everyone involved.
So true. So let's say you found someone special online. You've had a great first date, maybe a virtual coffee date, or a socially distanced walk in the park. How do you signal you're interested in taking things further?
This is where the advice on second dates comes in.
Okay.
And the key is to be clear and enthusiastic about your interest.
I'm loving this direct approach.
It's the best way.
So what kind of phrases would you suggest using?
You could say something like, I had such a wonderful time with you. Would you be open to getting together again?
Okay.
Or, I feel like we really connected. I'd love to see you again if you're interested.
Those are great examples.
They're direct, they express enthusiasm.
No room for ambiguity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even if you're not ready for a full-blown second date,
Yeah.
following up after the first date is so important.
Okay.
Just a simple message, thanking them for their time, saying you enjoyed their company. It goes a long way.
It keeps that momentum going.
Exactly.
Lets them know you're thinking about them.
Right.
Okay, so things are progressing beautifully. You're starting to develop deeper feelings. The source talks about expressing those feelings in a relationship, but for a lot of people, vulnerability can be terrifying.
Oh, it definitely can be.
Especially in a new language and culture. Any tips on how to navigate that fear and express your feelings in a way that feels authentic and safe?
Yeah, it's like walking a tightrope, right? One wrong step, and
Yeah.
you feel like you could just fall.
Totally. And it's even trickier when you're trying to do it in a new language and culture.
Absolutely. But vulnerability is scary. But it's also the key to deeper intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
And the source actually has some really good advice on expressing your feelings in a way that feels authentic and safe.
Okay, I'm ready to learn how to walk that tightrope with confidence. What's the secret?
Well, one technique they talk about is using I statements.
Okay.
So instead of saying, you make me feel so happy,
Right.
try saying, I feel so much joy when I'm with you.
Oh, wow. I see the
It's
difference.
subtle, but it's powerful.
Yeah, it's like you're owning your own feelings,
Exactly.
projecting them onto the other person.
And it takes the pressure off your partner.
Right.
Because you're not making them responsible for your happiness.
You're just sharing your own experience.
Exactly.
That's such a good point. It makes expressing those feelings feel less like a test and more like a gift.
I love that analogy.
But what about when things aren't all sunshine and roses? You know, the source also talks about handling conflict in relationship.
Oh, yeah. Conflict, that's inevitable.
Yeah, it is. How can we approach disagreements in a way that actually strengthens the bond instead of creating cracks?
Well, the source says it's about approaching those disagreements with a desire to understand rather than to win.
Okay.
It's about seeing conflict as an opportunity to learn more about each other
Right.
and find solutions that work for both of you.
That's a huge shift in perspective.
It is. But how do we actually do that? You know, when emotions are running high and it feels like you're on different planets.
Yeah, exactly.
But one thing that's helped me is active listening.
Okay.
And again, I don't just mean nodding and saying, uh-huh.
Right.
I mean, really listening with the intention of understanding their point of view, even if you don't agree with it.
So putting yourself in their shoes.
Exactly. Trying to see the world through their lens.
Even when it's hard.
Even when it's hard. And the source gives some tips on how to do that, like paraphrasing what you've heard.
Oh, okay.
You know, just to make sure you're understanding correctly.
Mm-hmm.
You can say something like, what I'm hearing you say is,
Yes.
it shows you're paying attention and that you're making an effort to see their side of things.
Such a simple but effective technique.
It can really de-escalate a situation.
Yeah. Create space for a more productive conversation.
Exactly.
And what about those times when, despite our best efforts, it becomes clear that the relationship has run its course?
Yeah.
The source talks about ending a relationship politely.
Breakups never easy.
No, they're not, but it's an important part of the dating journey.
It is, and it can be done with grace and compassion.
Okay.
The source says it's about being direct and honest,
Mm-hmm.
but also acknowledging the other person's feelings.
It's a delicate balance.
It is.
Yeah.
You want to be clear about your decision, but you don't want to be hurtful.
Right.
And the source actually provides some helpful phrases for these tough conversations.
Okay. Like what?
Well, instead of saying, I don't want to be with you anymore, you could say something like, I've enjoyed our time together, but I don't see us moving forward as a couple.
Oh, that's so much better.
It's honest, but it's also kind.
We've covered so much ground in this deep dive.
I know, right?
From those nerve-wracking first impressions to expressing our feelings, navigating conflict, even breakups.
The whole spectrum of dating.
I feel like I've learned so much, and I'm really inspired to put all these tips into practice.
Me too.
But before we sign off, I want to leave our listener with one final thought-provoking question. How has this deep dive changed your perspective on the role language plays in love and relationships?
That's a good one.
Take some time to reflect on that, maybe even discuss it with a friend or a partner.
Because ultimately, the best conversations about love, they happen in those intimate spaces we share with the people we care about.
So true. And remember, listeners, the journey of learning and growth never ends. Keep exploring, keep connecting, and keep expressing yourself with courage, kindness, and above all, authenticity. Until next time, may your love life be filled with joy, laughter, and the sweet music of genuine connection.